XFL and USFL here. All right, let's talk about it. Houston versus Michigan. That was our first game. Genji Bahar, I was really looking forward to number 11, seeing what he was going to bring to the table. I was pumped. I was excited. And then he proceeded to only crank out 109 yards passing. 59% completion. Nothing great. Nothing like offensively bad or something like that. Had 98 yards on the ground. It was, oh my goodness, we had 4 turnovers during this game. It's not a great game for Houston fans, hoping that their team's going to get better. Meanwhile, we have Michigan. Josh Love went 215 yards in the air, had a 90% completion rating, which is just mental. 90 yards rushing. Detroit fans, you might actually get a good team, so be excited for that. Next up, we had Birmingham versus New Jersey. We'll start with New Jersey here. At 177 yards passing, I mean, it's not like great, but it's not like offensively bad or anything in the passing department. However, DeAndre Johnson's offense was offensively bad. Okay, like he had a 30% completion rating. Nothing was working for this team. They need Kevontae Turpin back. They had 197 rush yards combined, so I mean, there's that to look forward to. Meanwhile, Birmingham Stallion fans, your team's still great. Scooby Wright didn't play as much. He had a calf injury, and one of your dynamic players had a ACL tear right at the beginning, so he's out. Not ACL, Achilles tendon tear. Yeah, he had 128 passing yards between Magoo and Smith. Smith got beat up a little early in the game, but he went out with a 66% completion rating. Magoo with 63. Magoo also had the longest rush of the night. For a quarterback on his team, and then 87 combined rushing. The Showboats versus Memphis, that was an exciting-ish game. Memphis went 192 yards. They went 55 and 40% completion rating. It wasn't great, and then they had 97 yards rushing. They stayed in the game, but you just work on the fundamentals, you'll be more than okay. Philadelphia, meanwhile, they have a lot to look forward to, in my opinion. You had 212 yards by Jeskakes Cookus. He had a 69% completion rating, which is nice. Then you had 94 yards rushing. There's a lot of upside on this Philadelphia team, and I really think that they want to get to that promised land, and they want to bring home the trophy. Not the Lombardi, just a trophy. Then we had Pittsburgh versus New Orleans. Pittsburgh was, oh my word, it was a rough game to watch. You had 81 yards and 84 rushing yards. It wasn't, your quarterback's not good, guys. I hate to break it to you. It's a fact. He's not good. Meanwhile, defensively, both teams looked absolutely stellar. New Orleans had a, smash mouth defense, and Pittsburgh, same thing, smash mouth defense. That front line, really, 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 really brutal. And then, New Orleans, they've got McLeod Bethel Thompson. He had over 300 yards passing. I mean, that's pretty good, but the score doesn't look like it was a great, bougie air raid game. But now we're going to be talking about predictions and power rankings for the USFL. So now we're on to predictions. So now we got the Stars versus the Panthers. I have full faith in the Stars. The Panthers sort of just popped out of nowhere. So I'm going to go with the Stars. They've been more consistent over the past season. The Panthers just sort of seem to burst onto the scene. I mean, 90% completion rate is super good for the starting quarterback, but I'm still going to go with the Stars there. Stallions versus Showboats. I'm going to go with Stallions. They're still the champions, and they still play like it. I mean, they lost a couple people to injury in the first week, but that's to be expected in a spring league. Showboats, I see it, but I'm going to need to see a little more better production. You might need to fire your head coach. I advocated for that last year. Then we got the Generals versus the Maulers, and I'm going to stick the Generals over the Maulers just because they have an offense. The Maulers barely got over 100 yards on offense. They didn't surpass 100 yards in either category, passing or rushing. So I'm going to go with the Generals there, obviously. I mean, they've got a good passing quarterback who can scramble. I mean, he lost his job to Justin Herbert, but he's still a great quarterback. And then you've got DeAndre Johnson, who is a shell of himself from what I saw. But he's still fast. He still popped out a really big run, so there's something to look forward to there. Then finally, we've got the Breakers versus the Gamblers. The Breakers have an offense. The Gamblers gave up 4 turnovers. It was not a pretty sight at all for the Gamblers. And I'm going to seriously take off a lot of points if you're a Houston Gambler. So Yeah, that's my prediction so far. So we got Stars beating Panthers, the Stallions beating the Showboats, the Generals beating the Maulers, and the Breakers beating the Gamblers. And then here are my Week 1 power rankings. And, I mean, it's Week 1, so I'm going to get a little bit of leeway here, right? Number 1, I got the Stallions. First and foremost, they're still the best team by far. The dual quarterback somehow still working for them. Meanwhile, the Stars, they look pretty great underneath Case Cookus, so always look forward to that. Michigan Panthers, 90% completion rate and 200 plus yards is just great. I don't care what type of team you play. So Panthers, they're going at number 3. Number 4, I've got the Breakers. I mean, they didn't put up the production that I wanted them to put up during the game, so that's why they're sitting at number 4. I feel like they have the pieces to score a lot more points. Number 6, I've got the Generals. The Generals out of the bottom feeders right now. Well, let's go to number 5 first. Number 5, we got the Showboats. They had a great team. And then now number 6, the bottom feeders, the teams that I think played the worst during the week. You've got an offense in the Generals, so that's always something to look forward to. Got a great dynamic running game, so you can always lean on that. Number 7, I've got the Houston Gamblers. The reason I got them there is just because I think they did a little bit more production on offense than what the Maulers did on offense, so that's why they're sitting where they are at number 7. I hope that they can fix that. I'm not completely for sure, though. Maybe we see a quarterback change. Number 8, the Maulers. I mean, it's the same old. It's like the USFL's version of the Detroit Lions or the Houston Texans, or who else that I can meme? The Detroit Lions, the Houston Texans, the Jets, the Browns, of course. So, I mean, you just have those. Moving on from the USFL, we're heading into the XFL. We had a lot of good games this weekend. So Seattle, the Seattle Dragons, you're doing okay. I mean, you played like with 21 for 31 on the passing game from Ben DiNucci. He had 260 yards passing. He had 123 yards rushing. Phillip Lindsay looks really good. 4 sacks, 6 TFLs, and 2 turnovers on defense. I mean, come on, Seattle. You played great. I'm super proud of you. And now you've put St. Louis on their toes. All you got to do is win one more game, and you're into the promised land of the playoffs. So, that's important. And then, I mean, hey, Ben DiNucci looked really good. I mean, 260 yards and no blatant turnovers. There was one turnover on offense, but it wasn't like super bad. St. Louis, meanwhile, you went 18 for 32, and that is with your star quarterback in A.J. McCarron. He got back. Not the greatest game you've ever played. 186 passing yards. You're going to need more if you're going to beat Seattle. You had 54 yards rushing. And that's with Brian Hill. I don't know what's up there. You had 2 sacks, 5 TFLs, and 1 turnover. So I want to see a little bit more from you now. You've got to win your next game, and you have to win it by a lot in order to be even a little bit safe from getting into the playoff. Seattle's got the upper hand right now, so St. Louis, you have to get in there and absolutely tear up whoever you play. Next, we have San Antonio versus Orlando. Jack Cohn, 25 for 31. That's his best so far, I think. 302 yards passing, another great performance passing-wise. 96 yards rushing, 3 sacks on the night. You had 5 TFLs and 1 turnover. This is a really good San Antonio team. This is the team that I thought we were going to get at the beginning of the year, and for some reason it's only showed up against Orlando. So, I mean, this is your best performance so far. Keep it up. You only have one more game to go. And if you bring the same intensity and the same energy against DC, guess who just made it to the playoffs, okay? Keep it up, San Antonio. There's only one more game, and fate's a little bit in Dallas's hand, but they're playing Houston. Then we got Orlando. Quentin Normandy did not play great. He had 154 yards rushing, 1 sack, and 4 TFLs. There's a lot that can be said about this Guardians team. You went into halftime with, well, you didn't go into halftime, but you had a great lead going into halftime. San Antonio came back, scored, and took the lead. So, man, looking at this Guardians team, it's just been a story of underperformance and I think bad coaching at the end of the day. Their stars players, Charleston Rambo, can't sneeze on him, but at the end of the day, I think it's coaching. Then we've got Dallas versus DC, and man, DC was as ruckus and rowdy as ever. You had Jordan Ta'amu and De'Aaron King go in. Jordan Ta'amu was a little banged up, so we saw a little more De'Aaron King than normal. 20 for 29, that's combined quarterbacks. He had 264 passing yards, 50 yards rushing, which is uncharacteristic for DC. And then you had 2 sacks, 2 TFLs, 1 turnover. So, I mean, okay showing on defense. Nothing great. I wouldn't consider it great. But, you're still doing good, and you're still the head seed of the playoff run right now. So, I'd say look forward to that, DC. Rest your players next week. I mean, you don't have to win this next game. You already have the home field advantage and everything. Then we have the Arlington Renegades versus DC, and this was not Kyle Slater, Luis Perez's first really cohesive game at quarterback. He went 31 for 41. Second quarter, they went through a slump, but they came back. He had 335 yards of passing, which is absolutely phenomenal. 113 yards of rushing. They had 6 TFLs, no sacks, but 2 turnovers. There's a reason Dallas came back and nearly stole this game from DC. They went into overtime. They couldn't do anything for those 2-point conversions, which is a bummer if I'm the Renegades staff. So, I mean, Dallas, you were close. You needed to win that game if you wanted to get into the playoff, but now you're cutting it close to the wire, and you're up against a Houston team. Now, Houston, we had 2 turnovers that were touchdowns on defense, so I guess I'm proud of you there. Offensively, we had 105 yards of passing, 135 yards of rushing. But if you look at it, Houston evened out, their play type, so we went 26 passing, 26 run games. So that's a better ratio from A.J. Smith. So I would try to hopefully get a better offense going passing-wise, but you did okay enough. Defensively, 4 sacks, 5 TFLs, 2 fumbles. That's great. You're great on defense. I'm worried about your offense, though. And next week you go up against Dallas. So it's whichever team you want to go against, Dallas or San Antonio. That's the one that you get to play. Vegas. I think Vegas is okay. They had 249 passing yards, 96 rushing yards, 4 TFLs, 2 turnovers. Vegas. That being said, you've got to win these games, man. You can't shoot yourself in the foot with the 2 defensive scores. Rod Woodson, man, he needs to get fired, and it's disappointing that I say that. But if you want to do anything next year, you started off with some star power, like Martavius Bryant, Channing Stribling. I think it's Channing Stribling. That might be USFL that I'm thinking. Vegas has just underperformed for me this year. Next week, here are my predictions. In no particular order, we've got Seattle versus Vegas. Now, I've got Seattle winning this game. It's a must-win game. They've come off a really good game against St. Louis, so I think their players are coming in with a little bit of cockiness. Vegas, however, it's the same story from Vegas. I don't know what else to say. I don't think they're going to win this game. They're going to make it close, but I don't think they're going to win. Next up, I've got Orlando beating St. Louis. Now, hear me out, okay? Orlando has already beaten a high-quality team in D.C., so, what stops them from messing up another team's record and kicking St. Louis out of the playoffs completely? I feel like that's something Orlando and Terrell Buckley would do just because, okay? Then we've got D.C. versus the Brahmas. So, I think Brahmas are coming in. I think they're going to win this game because D.C., I think they're going to start their second strings this week instead of all their starters. I mean, you want to see what you got in other players, and you've already got the first seed of the division locked up. So, I mean, there's a lot to look forward to if you're a DC fan. Then you've got San Antonio. I think they're on a high right now. I think they're going to be playing with everything they got, hoping to get to the playoffs. Then finally, I've got Houston versus the Renegades. I think Houston wins this. Man, it's hard to tell. Is Luis Perez's big game last week, is that a one-off, or is the Renegades, is that a good team now? So I've got Houston winning that one. Power rankings. Number 1, I've got DC. That's easy choice there. Number 2, I've got Seattle. Now, they're high-powered offense, so, watch out for Seattle. Number 3, a little bit further down, I've got St. Louis. And then number 4, I've got Houston. Houston, Man, I could almost change them for number 3 just because I feel like St. Louis is falling off a cliff right now. But Houston, you still got it. Number 5, I've got the Arlington Renegades. And they're there, but they might leave shortly. And that's in the case that San Antonio actually makes it to the playoffs instead of Arlington. And so I've got San Antonio number 6. And there's... I just... every time I hope for San Antonio to win, I feel like they underperform, which I know that's pessimistic, but nevertheless, come on, San Antonio, you're hurting me here. And then number 7, I've got Vegas. Vegas just has a more they beat Orlando, and who else did Vegas beat? They beat somebody else, didn't they? I don't remember. Anyway, but Vegas, I got number 7, and then number 8, I got Orlando. So that's all I have for y'all lovely people for today. I love you. I'll see you next time.